Hey everyone, John Lorden here. Welcome to your BrainScratch for April 27th, 2018. Thank you so much for joining me. Hope you had a nice week and happy Friday. I want to give a quick thank you to Amber for getting me kick-started on the research for this one. She told me an overview of the story, sent me a bunch of links, and piqued my interest very quickly. This is a case out of Texas. It kind of reminds me a bit of a few different cases we've actually covered in the past. Starts out as a missing person case, but with an interesting twist of they are in contact with law enforcement for a pretty solid period of time while law enforcement is looking for them. Then it seems like the phone's battery runs out and law enforcement keeps searching and eventually finds the car, but the person is missing. Now, there's some other interesting things that are going on with this story. There is a potential lawsuit that might name a judge in it and some other things. So I'm going to try to cover this story chronologically. How much does that really tie into the potential for her disappearance? We will find out. But this is the case of Allie Burress. So let's get started just by taking a quick look at her Facebook page here. And I believe these are her children. She is a mother of two. She had her children with a previous boyfriend. I would think this is probably her husband at the time that she disappeared. His name is Vincent Williams. Down below, we see her favorite music is Lil Wayne. Really interesting kind of weird thing here. Her favorite television show is actually First 48, which is an investigation show, if you're not familiar with, that highlights why the first 48 hours are so critical in investigations. But outside of that, we can see she has a couple of affiliations with places in Paris, Texas. She, from what I understand, lived most, if not all, of her life in Paris, Texas. So a little bit that we could glean from her Facebook page. But let's get started with the news articles and see if we can figure out what's happening around this. Starting with an article from courthousenews.com, May 26th, 2015. This is approximately a month before Allie would go missing. Allie Jo Burress says she was a spectator at a murder trial in a Lamar County, Texas courtroom when Judge Eric Clifford, concerned about safety, ordered that she be searched after he saw her mouth the words, "I love you," to the suspect. Now, the suspect is the father of her two children, but as I just mentioned, she has since gotten married to someone else, and we're going to learn about it's a murder trial, obviously, but we'll get a little bit more of the conditions around that. Burress claims that Paris Police Detective Ronica Blake then strip searched her in a restroom without a warrant. Burress sued Blake, Paris Police Chief Bobby Joe Hunley Jr., which is kind of interesting to me. I'm not sure what angle she has there, but we'll see if we can get some clarification, and a John Doe. Who's the John Doe? We're also going to find out. The judge's order to search Burress was valid and enforceable, but the issue of whether Blake was wrong to strip search Burress is a different story. Blake stated in an affidavit that Burress began disrobing in the restroom without Blake requesting it. Blake claimed that Allie had said she had been through this before and knew what to do. Of course, Burress denies that, saying the detective ordered her to strip. And just on the face of these accusations, and understanding that it's coming down to kind of a she said situation here. You've got the detective saying that, no, I didn't ask her to take off her clothes. And you have Allie saying, yes, absolutely, she demanded that I take off my clothes. What's interesting to me here is, why did they wind up in the bathroom at all? If we're talking a regular pat-down search, hello, we go through those just, going through the airport if you don't want to use that scanning machine. And that's publicly visible to sometimes hundreds of people. So I'm curious why they wound up in the bathroom in the first place. If the judge did want her searched for some reason, was afraid that she was, I don't even know what the fear was here. She mouths "I love you" to the defendant, and that's enough to be fearful that she's tampering with this case in some way. I kind of don't understand even that the judge asked her to, and it wasn't that the judge was kicking her out of the courtroom. They can certainly do that if they have cause. But just asked her to be searched. She actually came back into the courtroom after the search, but she was so embarrassed by what had happened, she basically got her friend and just left. That's also kind of part of this charge. They're saying that it impeded on her First Amendment rights to be able to participate in the courtroom. So what is this charge about? Let's jump over to an article at kxii.com. A Paris man, and this is from February 27th, 2013. So this court case actually happened back in 2013. That last article we were looking at is about the suit coming from the case, and that's why it was written in 2015. But back in 2013, a Paris man has been sentenced to life in prison for the murder of his wife. Barrett's wife was found stabbed to death multiple times inside her home last April. So very serious charge. Obviously a terrible, terrible crime. I'm not quite sure why Allie would have been motivated to even mouth "I love you" to this guy, considering she has a husband. I don't know if there might have been some type of relations that were still going on with the father of her children. But then we get this twist over at topics.com, and we have to take this with a little bit of a grain of salt because we're not really sure about verified identities here, but someone named Allie Burress, interestingly saying they were from Decatur, Georgia, which is not the right location from what I understand from Allie's backstory. But February 27th, 2013, same date, we get this post over at Topics. And let me just start by saying I review threads at Topics occasionally. It is one of the ugliest and most profane threads that I have seen at Topics, but in general, conversations at Topics don't go very well. It seems to be a place where people want to come and lash out anonymously, and they say very, very ugly things. So I'm interested here, just right off the bat, that Allie would have even come here and spoken publicly, but she did. Let's see what she had to say. It is sad how corrupt the police are. I was strip searched at the trial without any cause, still not knowing why I was singled out. Very unprofessional. Guess since Byron is my baby daddy, they want to mess with me. Now, I won't even get into the replies, but she is attacked for being involved with an African American. She is accused of previous drug use. She is accused of previous prostitution. I know in other threads that I trust much more than this one, I did find some note that she might have had a DUI at some point in the past. Potential drug use. If this Allie is the right Allie, she actually admits to it at some point, but very, very ugly comments that are going on here, all attacking her very directly. It seems like she then drops the last name from her profile, but continues to reply here. I wasn't supporting him. Justice needed to be served for her. So at least here she's acknowledging that Byron was definitely in the wrong. I mean, I don't know how you could think of it any other way. And then she's even putting a post here. I would like to remove a comment I made earlier. Is there a way to do that? And I don't think these threads are moderated. No one really responds to any of that. Much more attacks, pretty much along the same lines I already told you guys about. And then she comes back. I never said anything bad about any of you. I really wish y'all would let me be. Justice was done, and I'm not a crackhead anymore. I'm someone, and I'm married, and I'm doing something with my life. If things on here don't stop, you will hear from my lawyer. That is a promise. Just let me be and leave my child out of this. Yeah, unfortunately, they started also attacking one of her children. I'm thankful I'm not the woman I was. I'm sorry for the woman that I used to be. She also mentions that she's on the right track thanks to Allah, thanks to her belief in Allah. And of course, she gets attacked for that as well in this thread. Pages continue on it. Nothing much more from Allie specifically. Like I said, I'm not 100% sure this is her, but the likelihood of it being her seems pretty high. The timing is perfect for when the judgment came down. And we know that she eventually did wind up filing a lawsuit with this detective. How did that lawsuit play out? We're going to find out some more there. But there is a write-up here on the actual charges, and I wanted to get a bit of a better understanding, particularly about why the police chief was called out and maybe who the John Doe was. As to Hundley, who is sued only in his official capacity, plaintiff seeks a permanent injunction requiring him to institute proper procedures for training his officers in the constitutional limits of searches and seizures of persons, especially as to strip searches conducted without a warrant, and to therefore implement those procedures. So basically, she was bringing him into the lawsuit just to get something put into effect that he would have to train his officers not to conduct strip searches without a warrant, essentially. He gets dropped from the lawsuit in pretrial. As to John Doe, defendant number one, the only allegation that is made is that he is an unknown person who ordered the illegal search of plaintiff. So I believe that John Doe number one is actually the judge that was working the murder trial. I don't know why they refer to the judge as a John Doe. I don't know if there's some type of protection or something along those lines, but John Doe is also dropped from this as it moves forward. However, the charges with the detective, specifically Detective Blake, do stand and move forward in the process. How does that all play out? We'll get back to it. But I told you guys I wanted to kind of do this by time frame. So what happens? June 29th, 2015. So we know this trial's going on. All that stuff's being filed. A month later, Lamar County, Texas, crews are searching for a woman who went missing after crashing her car into a ditch near a Lamar County cornfield early Monday morning. Deputies say Allie Burress, 28, reported the crash around 1:30, that's a.m., but told deputies she didn't know where she was. Searchers located her car near County Road 14850, about 15 miles south of Paris, around 10:30 a.m. Chief Deputy Jeff Springer says several local agencies, including canines, are searching the area for Burress. Quote, I mean, if it means searching into the night, that's what we're going to do, Spring said. We don't want to give up just because we're uncomfortable or anything like that. She needs to be found, until either we find her or somebody finds her. Now, from timeframes I've seen on this, trying to put together what was going on, the night that she disappeared, or I guess the previous day, she was actually at a casino, and she was seen on footage at a casino in Shreveport, Louisiana. I hope I'm remembering that correctly. That's about a 2.5 hour drive from where she lives in Paris, Texas. She was with her husband, and they were driving home from the casino. Sometime around 10:30 at night, she has an argument with her husband. He gets out of the car, and police find him walking on the side of the road and basically give him a ride home. Much later, at about 1:30 in the morning, she contacts 911, says that, she's been in some type of car accident, her car's stuck, and the search for her begins. She stays on the phone with them for a long period of time. There's actually 911 tapes that have been released. There'll be a link to it down in the sources below. And from what I can see, it's at least 30 minutes that she's actually on the phone with them. You can hear everyone that is working trying to find her, all the different methods that they're using trying to find her. It's strange because even knowing what I know about this case, I listened to that tape kind of at the end of my research, and I still had this feeling as I was listening to it of, I hope they find her. I hope they find her. And it seems to me that people are working very, very hard trying to find her, but they really don't know where this car is. They're all thinking about what cornfield could it be, and they're kind of talking to each other about cornfields that they're familiar with. Really, really tough situation. But they do find her car at 10:30 the following morning. Unfortunately, she's not there. Moving forward to a Facebook post from the Lamar County Sheriff's Office. This is where the case turns into a missing person. Burress last spoke with LCSO 911 Communications Center earlier this morning between the hours of 1 to 3 a.m. on today's date, June 29th, 2015, in reference to a motor vehicle accident. Now, I don't believe she was on the phone with them for a full 2 hours from what I heard the dispatchers talking about. It seemed like her phone died, but she went back to the car, and I believe she had another phone that was canceled that didn't have service that she was still paying for on it, but she used that to call 911. So she did get back in touch with them, but it seems like it's just for a really short period of time. We have been told that she was last seen wearing a red shirt, blue jean shorts, and no shoes. Burress might be suffering from a possible head injury from this accident. That's another thing that is pretty clear listening to the 911 communication that's going on around this. They're relaying to the officers, the 911 communication center is relaying to the officers that she might have been hit in the head because she doesn't recall if she was driving. She thinks her husband was with her at some point, but she thinks she might have dropped him off. It basically seems like a few hours of her memory are just wiped out. And is that due potentially to the car accident? Maybe. Is there something else at play here? Some type of narcotic use or maybe even a physiological problem? It's weird because it almost sounds to me like someone that had a stroke or something. I mean, it's kind of strange that just a very finite period of her memory is just shot to the point where she's not even sure if she was driving. Very, very curious. But let's see if we can learn more about the accident. Over at ketr.org, we get some more detail. Delta County Sheriff Ricky Smith said her silver Toyota, I believe it was a Corolla, was found well off State Highway 24, crashed behind Midway Fire Department. Burress reported the crash. However, she wasn't able to tell authorities her exact location. Lamar County Sheriff's Office describes the area where her vehicle was found as very remote, as they utilized the GPS on her phone to find the location in the dark. Law enforcement tried returning her call, but it appeared that her phone had lost its charge. So they continue the search for a few days. From what I know they had a helicopter out the night that she was missing, as well as numerous different police units that were searching for her. Canines a few times. I think I've also read that there was an airplane search that was done when the sun finally came up and they figured out where her car was. They flew over with an airplane looking for her, could not find her. We get to July 2nd, 2015. Officials ended the ground hunt for 28-year-old Allie Burress Thursday afternoon after bringing in a second set of search dogs, still unable to locate her. We have searched every corner of the area from the air and ground using specialized canines trying to search for live bodies, deceased bodies, and have come up with nothing, Lamar County Chief Deputy Jeff Springer said. So we get to July 2nd and the search is over. It is strange, said Lamar County Sheriff's Officer Joe Tuttle, the damage to the car was minor. The airbags didn't even deploy. I find that really strange because the explanation that we're getting from the 911 center about the injuries that she suffered made it seem like she took a pretty serious knock to the head, but any type of force stopping her that hard for that to have happened, I would assume would have fired off the airbags unless it didn't come from a car accident. Quote, we are at a standstill at the moment, but are following any calls or leads, added Officer Tuttle. We just need to know that she's okay. So to give you guys a little bit of an idea of the area we're talking about, I found a map that was put together by one of the wonderful people over at Web Sleuths. They have a thread going on this. I think it's only about 4 pages long, but it was an excellent resource for finding articles and things like this where we can kind of see the area. So you heard me mention Highway 24. That is over here. And the road where her car was actually found was here. Now, another map that I found says that the car was found right about at this elbow in the road right here. They did say it was behind the fire department, the Midway Fire Department, and this is a spot marking the Midway Fire Department right here. So I guess you could consider that if the car was back here somewhere, that would be behind the fire department. But also kind of interesting to me that she's so close to a resource that could potentially help her. I mean, if you look to the west of where this car was supposedly found, there's not a ton of buildings, but there are buildings. I mean, if she came over in this direction and was able to walk for a mile or two, the likelihood that she was going to hit either a personal residence, the fire department, someone else's home area was relatively decent, was actually a pretty good shot. But if she went walking off to the east, you can see it's just going into land. There is nothing for buildings at all. There's a creek over there. That's one of the things that was mentioned on the 911 information that I heard. She wasn't sure if she had already crossed the creek. So that's kind of a layout of just the area from the air. And Paris, the town where she's from, is located pretty much a straight shot north. It's up here. As a matter of fact, it looks like they even have their own Eiffel Tower, according to Google. What's interesting about her boyfriend or her husband being dropped off is he was dropped off on this 271 over here, up here somewhere, and then taken home. So, and considering that happened at about 10:30 at night, I'm wondering, did she make it home first to Paris and then left for some reason? There is no way that I can see from the roads that are coming up on the map here for her to have jumped from the 271 to where her car is located down here. There's no straight shot across. She had to get up at least close to town. The closest highway that she could have jumped over and trying to avoid town would be this 286 here. So it's very strange to me that we have them coming, and this is the path to the casino, this highway. We have them coming back this way. She drops off her husband after they have an argument, and then a couple hours later, she's down here. How that happens, I really don't know. And once again, we're talking about that kind of lost time of a few hours and not knowing what she went through during all that. Also, in terms of the car, here is a shot of the car when it was found. I'm not positive. It's weird because some of the descriptions say that it was a cornfield, and she specifically told them that she thought she was in a cornfield. I can't really tell. I'm not familiar enough with what a cornfield would look like as opposed to other types of fields out there. But it seemed to really send the police in a certain direction in terms of where they were looking. They kept referring to cornfields that they knew and trying to send units out to look there. But you can see the car looks relatively stuck, if nothing else. I'm surprised why, if she wound up in this situation, even if her memory was blown, why she wouldn't have possibly tried to follow where the car had come from. Like, did she knock over enough brush that she could kind of make out a path back there? Keep in mind, this is, 1:30 in the morning, so it's probably very, very dark out there. And according to the 911 information, she gets back to the car several times. It seems like she really doesn't get very far from the car while she's talking to 911. She tells them she's honking the horn. It sounds like the battery's going out in the car. She's staying there trying to listen for sirens or to see lights. She tells them when she sees what looks like potentially police unit lights that are coming in around her. It's weird because that's part of what bothers me about listening to the 911 stuff. It sounds like a situation that should be resolved any moment. Like, the pieces are there. Yes, she seems to be hurt, but she's staying on the phone with them. They didn't talk about any medical needs that she had that would have been immediate. I don't even know if they had deployed any type of medical, like ambulance or anything. From what I heard, everything was pretty much just getting the police out there trying to locate her first. Maybe it makes sense to do that before you would deploy a resource like an ambulance. But if she was in some type of grave bodily harm that she could have described to the 911 operator, that did not come across in the 911 operator's communications with the dispatch, through the dispatch to the units. So I don't know. This is definitely a brain scratch for me, guys. Back over at ketr.org, it's been nearly a month since Lamar County woman Allie Burress dialed 911 reporting she was lost. Quote, "We fear the worst," said Lamar County Sheriff's Office Joe Tuttle after the length of time she has been missing. "There were no personal belongings left in her car, no purse or cell phone. We have followed up on every lead and have heard nothing from any of her family or friends. Until we receive any new leads, we are just discombobulated." So obviously you can tell the local authorities are frustrated. They don't know where else to search. They've done their search procedures. They've stopped their search procedures. They're now a month out, just saying they're basically waiting for some type of information or some type of tip to help them. back over at KXII. And basically KXII and KETR were the two primary local resources. That's why we're reviewing so many of their articles here. October 29th, 2015, we're now several months after she has gone missing. The family of a Lamar County woman missing since June is offering a $10,000 reward. The reward is for anyone with information leading to her return or the arrest and conviction of the persons responsible for her death. Really interesting to me. I've seen a lot of reward notices go out, and I've never seen any of them that kind of presumed that the person was dead. But I think that we can take that as a bit of an indicator of what her family was thinking and fearing, several months after she had gone missing. And then we roll forward to June 29th, 2016. It has now been 1 year since a Lamar County woman went missing after crashing her car next to a cornfield. And obviously, that's it. It's an article to say it's been a year, but there is no new information, no new details that come out of that article whatsoever. And January 25th, 2017, we get an update on her charges against the officer for the strip search. A federal jury has ruled in favor of a Paris police officer sued by a Lamar County woman who has been missing for almost 2 years. I find it just a little bit odd that they wouldn't have postponed this or delayed this case in some way, but they processed the case without her there. So basically, your main source of information to represent her side was not able to represent her side there. So am I surprised that the jury ruled that way? Not at all. I don't know if maybe they had a videotape deposition of hers that her lawyer was able to present or something along those lines. It just doesn't feel like it was probably a very fair trial considering that Allie wasn't there to actually take part in it. But that's just my opinion looking from the outside. It could be that, all her information was presented well by her attorney and she still would have lost this. I don't know for sure. But we move forward over at eparisextra.com. We get an update. This is in March of 2017. Recent human remains found have been identified as Allie Burress. On March 16th, 2017, the Lamar County Sheriff's Office was contacted by a resident near Lamar County Road 14760 in regards to finding human remains on his property. Sheriff detectives arriving on scene were told by the landowner that while taking care of some cattle on his property this morning, he located a skull and bones appearing to be of human origin. The human remains were sent to University of North Texas Center for Human Identification. I believe that's the same area that is the home of NamUs. And she was positively identified through DNA and dental records. What I'm curious about is this description of how she was found. We're only hearing a skull and bones that appeared to be human. What happened to her clothes? What happened to her purse? What happened to her cell phone? Is it possible her remains were carried away from where that other stuff was? I don't know. It's just kind of boggles my mind, and I have found no details in terms of those items that should still be out there somewhere being found. Another article at eParis Extra on this gives us some more detail. They reached out to the property owner, and the property owner wishes to remain anonymous. He stated that it was his son, actually, that stumbled upon Burress's remains. I was shocked by the discovery, and my family and I are still shocked that she was found on our property. The property owner also stated that the property was searched during the week Burress initially went missing, not only by them, but also law enforcement. The owner said it was emotional for them that she was found, but they're happy that her family would finally have some closure. Then on April 13th, 2016, through the examination of a forensic anthropologist, it has been determined that Allie Burress's cause of death is inconclusive, and there is no evidence to suggest foul play. According to Lieutenant Jonathan Smith of the Lamar County Sheriff's Office, Burress did have a fractured sacrum. Hope I'm saying that right. The sacrum is a triangular bone on the lower back. It could be that Burress suffered the fracture during the crash, or a cow could have stepped on her, stated Smith, which makes sense. It could be that fracture happened after the fact. But I always have to mention this when we're talking about skeletal remains in terms of a diagnosis of no foul play or no evidence to suggest foul play. It's the only type of evidence when you're only dealing with bones that could suggest foul play are if a knife possibly nicked one of the bones, if a bullet was lodged in one of the bones, grazed one of the bones, shattered one of the bones. And of course, there is a bone in the neck that frequently gets broken if someone is strangled. But outside of those pretty specific methods of foul play, I have not heard of any other analysis coming from a skeleton only. It's kind of hard to say when you don't have the soft tissue there. And we know she went through something. She had suffered some type of injury to her head. That is clear from the 911 information. Obviously, they didn't see enough to note it here. So they didn't notice like maybe a fracture in her skull or, a cheekbone break or anything like that is not noted. So it just, I don't know. It bothers me when cases go this way because you always hear this, oh, there's no evidence to suggest foul play. I understand that there's no evidence to suggest it, but the conditions around this case of how she disappeared are very, very strange. Does it mean that it has anything to do with the court case? I don't think so. I think there is just a lot of crazy bad timing that is going on between these two events and them coinciding with each other. Do I believe that law enforcement worked as hard as they could to find her? Yes. And if you don't, I think you should listen to the 911 communication that is going around this case. It is fairly clear to me that many resources were pulled out. They worked really hard to try to find her. And just like happens in missing person cases very frequently, towards the end of that tape, you can hear where their attention is starting to get pulled to other things that are going on, like an act of burglary that's going on, a guy that's drunk in public that's being arrested. It kind of dies off towards the end of the tape because they don't know what else to do. And in that tape, they haven't even found her car yet. Now, it is a very interesting question when you look at where she was actually found. Here is where her car was supposedly found, and you've got about a mile away, 1 mile, are where the remains are found. Now, they are found on private property. As we heard, the landowner says that he did a search and he allowed law enforcement to come on and search his property. They didn't find her at that time. I think that's pretty interesting. It's one of those things where when that comes up in cases, people always wonder, was her body placed there after the fact? I don't normally go with that method of thinking. It makes more sense to me that they tried to search an area. The area was probably very large. Maybe they didn't do, a very tight search and they missed the person. But there's things about this case that bother me, like the clothes, the phone, the purse. Where are all those items? And of course, maybe there is a reasonable explanation. Maybe it was animals that had moved some of her remains to that point where they were found. We don't have a lot of detail in terms of how complete the skeletonized remains were. Are we talking a whole body? Are we talking just, a third of her body being found there? I don't know. But we have absolutely no details about her personal effects ever being found. But it is troublesome to me that you're talking about it was a mile away from where her car was. And even with search dogs and multiple resources out there, somehow they missed her. And it's a terrible thing. If you do want to listen to the 911 tape for yourselves, check the Facebook link down below that says texasstatenews.net. It's about 25 minutes. And for some reason, some of the information repeats itself, but there's new stuff that happens. I don't know why. You'll feel like you're listening to a loop of some of the same information, but then after that, some new info will come out of it. So if you want to get the whole thing, listen to it from start to finish because you might miss some information. Also down below, I will have a link to the Web Sleuth thread, a Reddit thread on this case. And this is where I turn it over to you guys. What is going on with this case? it kind of blows my mind. We have a person that goes missing. I'm telling you, by all accounts, she should have been found, and somehow she was just missed. And one of those things, actually, let me jump back to a comment here at Web Sleuths. This is from Spanish Moss Antiques. I used to work as a park ranger, and I cannot tell you how many calls I received for assistance for someone who was lost. I would tell the subject to stay exactly where they are, but in every case, as soon as I'd head out to look for them, they'd venture off on their own. If you're lost, stay in one place. If you have your vehicle, you can utilize so many parts of it for your survival. I think that's just excellent advice, and I really wanted to point that out to you guys before we ended today's episode. But we know that she was at least near her car. We know that they didn't find her car for approximately 7 hours after they lost communication with her. But if there wasn't an imminent threat to her health, shouldn't she have just stayed with her car and waited to be located? And, 7 hours later, they would have found her. Did she go walking off in the dark, have some type of slip and fall situation? Did breaking that bone in her back put her in so much pain that she couldn't move after that, or couldn't find help? I don't know. There's so much that's strange. And even looking at the map of where the car crash was and where she was found, I mean, she basically walked almost alongside a road for a mile. And eventually, she's found near another road that is crossing in the opposite direction. Once you got to a road, wouldn't you have stopped and tried to flag someone down? There's a lot of things about this case that really bother me when you look at the logic of what's happening there. But is it right to look at it logically when you're talking about someone that had something affect her mind? I mean, we know that she had some issue. I don't know if it's physiological, don't know if it's drug, don't know if it's related to the accident, but something affected her mind to the point where she wasn't even sure if she was the one driving her own car. Seemed to recall that her husband was with her. And we know that was a few hours before. So I don't know, guys. It's really a strange case. Let's talk about it in the comments below. Let me know your thoughts. I also saw what I thought was references to her 911 call, to basically a tape where you could hear her speaking to 911. I wasn't able to find that. If any of you are able to find that, please share that with the rest of us in the comments below. I don't know if people were just talking about the 911 operator to the dispatch calls that were going out to the units. But the way that I was reading some of those comments, I thought they were talking about tape where you could actually hear her speaking to the 911 operator. If you find that, please share it with us. Please let me know about it, because I definitely want to check that out as well. But this is a real tough one. And because you have a case where no evidence of foul play, I don't think it's being investigated. I don't think there's anything for them to really investigate. Which might be a shame in this case, because it sure seems like something else is at play. I really can't put my finger on what it is. I know some people have suggested maybe if she was afraid of another DUI, maybe she was driving drunk and crashed, and then she called for help, but then she was worried about being found drunk, and then she went off, to try to hide from the police almost. From what I'm hearing on the 911 stuff, I don't know if that's accurate, because she's in communication with them for a long time, and they really seem to be doing their best with her efforts trying to find her. So I don't know if that theory really holds up either, but this is where I turn it over to you guys. Let's talk about it. Let me know what you think in the comments below. If nothing else, I hope that this is a situation maybe we can learn from. If you are in a situation similar to this, stay with the car. If it's 8 hours, if it's 10 hours, if it's 12 hours, the car will be found at some point. Stay with the car. Much easier to spot that from the air than just someone, particularly if you are hurt in enough brush where it could be covering you up. It's just, and I don't know. I don't even know if that's what we're talking about in this case. My mind's just really blown on this one. Anyway, thank you guys so much for being here for this episode of BrainScratch. I appreciate each and every one of you out there. Hope you have a nice weekend. Please come back on Monday to the Lord and Arts channel. I'll be here.